America is home to 33 million small businesses, the beating heart of communities across the country.
And proof that the American dream is still alive.
This is a show about those dreamers and doers and the communities they serve.
Their real life stories.
Their struggles and successes.
Their grit, determination, and passion.
And the people who fight
to keep their American dream alive.
I'm Alfredo Ortiz.
I'm Elaine Parker.
And it's time for another episode of Main Street Matters,
America's small business megaphone.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Main Street Matters, America's small business megaphone. I'm Elaine Parker, and today we are joined by my very good friend, John McLaughlin. John is the CEO and partner of McLaughlin & Associates. He's worked professionally as a strategic consultant and pollster for over 40 years. John's earned a reputation for helping some of America's most successful corporations and winning some of the toughest elections in the nation, including our most recent election, because you did some polling for President Trump's campaign. Is that correct?
Yes, I've polled for President Trump. I've advised him since 2011 and got through the 2015, 2016 campaign, the 2019, 2020 campaign, and the most recent one. In fact, there's stories that it was reported in one of Bob Woodward's books, but he had the date wrong. It was February of 21. I told President Trump in a meeting, myself at Mar-a-Lago with Jason Miller and the president, I said, you realize 63% of the Republicans want you to run again. And that was February of 21. And I said, when Biden fails, you'll win. Just like Jimmy Carter failed and Reagan won on a landslide, you will, when he fails, and he'll fail, you will win. And he's been running, he was running hard because as Biden dismantled his policies, President Trump, and particularly when they went after him personally, tried to take away his wealth, tried to take away his right to free speech, his freedom, right? Tried to put him in jail and didn't give him enough Secret Service protection that you had 2 assassination attempts on him. So, after he got through this campaign, but particularly he was on a mission though, because he wanted to restore a growing economy. He wanted to secure the border. He wanted to try to end the endless wars overseas. He's quite a historic figure, and he's won a historic election again. And now we're seeing a lot of activity in all different areas. So he really is a historic figure. So it's been an honor to work for him all these years.
I bet. I mean, just interesting to be part of presidential election like this multiple times now with such a consequential figure. And some of the people that you have polled for, congressmen, senators, just a fascinating career. And I know that you also have do some polling in the Hispanic community. And so I wanted to invite you on for a couple of reasons to talk about the Hispanic vote this last election, but also because you are going to be joining us May 1st and 2nd in Savannah, Georgia for our second Freedom Fighters Summit and Gala. Now is in Savannah, Georgia. And if anybody's interested in taking a look at it, the website to register and look at the agenda and who's going to be there. Of course, John's there. So of course you want to come is jcn2025summit.com. And you can check out all the speakers. But just to give you all a little bit of rundown, we've got about 2 days worth of exciting panels. We're going to talk about debt and deficit, and we're going to talk about the Hispanic vote. We're going to talk about deregulation. We're going to talk about education in America, education freedom. We've got Charlie Gasparino, Hugh Hewitt from Salem Radio. We've got Governors Youngkin, Governor Kemp, Kellyanne Conway is coming. Some of the best and the brightest in the conservative movement. So check out the site, check out the summit. John, the panel that you're going to be on specifically is going to talk about the Hispanic vote. And I think this is such a fascinating topic for us to sort of deconstruct and look at how things went. The name of the panel is Si Se Puede, Growing and Keeping the Hispanic Vote. And to translate Si Se Puede, I had to look it up because I am not Hispanic. Yes, it is possible. and it can be done is the translation that I found. So yes, it can be done, and it was done by President Trump. I mean, when you look at the stats, John, because we did kind of deconstruct it, and we were very involved in a Hispanic vote coalition at JCN through the election in bringing out more Hispanic votes and getting more Hispanics registered, because what are they so interested in? It's the faith, family, entrepreneurship, freedom, education. Those are the things that we talk to them about. I mean, what did Ronald Reagan always say? Hispanics are Republican. They just don't know it.
Well, they are becoming more Republican. So, and you know, what's great about now, I was involved in the Trump campaign, and you all were doing independent efforts to help President Trump get elected, particularly in the battleground states and critical states like Arizona and Nevada. Nevada was one of my one of the battleground states I had to track for President Trump. And we were never behind with the Hispanic vote in Nevada, which was amazing. And the polling data that I get that we do, by the way, you know, you find this, yeah, my surname is McLaughlin and you're Parker, but I have a Spanish speaking polling company, Opiniones Latinas, and my partner is Carlos Rodriguez, who's a longtime Republican consultant.
He's great. I've met him. With
my brother Jim. And we've worked at the Hispanic vote for a long time. For a lot of us kids who grew up in the Bronx, New York, Desdale, Bronx. But, you know, you understand the Hispanic vote, and you understand it's not monolithic. It's more complex than people think. And as Ronald Reagan said, it was trending Republican. And in 2004, Carlos and myself, we took a lot of abuse because we did a poll right before the election, and we said George W. Bush was going to get 4% of the Hispanic vote nationally. And we did it for the Latino Action Coalition and the Latino Coalition. So we did it. They beat us up. Bush got 44% of the Hispanic vote. This time around, Carlos and I were doing polling for Univision and in the battleground states, and we also did a post-election survey, which is the one survey you can't get wrong among Hispanic voters because it's done after the election. And you know, the exit polls for the networks, they had Trump getting a record 46% of the Hispanic vote, and we were. And the Trump campaign was focused on trying to break the record for the Hispanic vote, because when you look at, you know, the first time out he got in the 20s, he got 32% in 2020, and that was the reason why we lost. The Trump strategy going into the 24 election was really founded in 22. Did some independent surveys with John Jordan and Dick Morris, and we targeted four legs of the Democrat Party: younger voters, suburban women, African Americans, and Hispanics. And what was interesting about in 2023 during the Hispanic vote, during the building into the election during the primaries, we found within the campaign we were picking up that roughly 4 or 5% of the electorate had switched from being a Biden 2020 voter to voting for Trump. And when you looked at these switchers who'd gone from Biden 20 to Trump 24, who were they? Quarter were Black, quarter were Hispanic, and their average age was 35. And so the Republican Party didn't expand into the traditional country club Republicans, the college educated voters. It was the Hispanic voters, and they were a huge component. Now, the problem with the Hispanic vote we did is, and it's not a problem with Hispanics, the problem is the Republicans. The Republicans, they don't realize, okay, you did really well in this election with Hispanic voters because of inflation, because of immigration, because Hispanic voters who vote are citizens. Right. Particularly people forget Puerto Ricans. Those are Americans. You know, they're citizens, and they don't have to, you know, they treated like second class citizens a lot of times. They're, you know, other Hispanic voters who come here, whether they were refugees from communism like Cubans or Venezuelans or Nicaraguans, etc. If they were fleeing Marxist dictatorships in Central and South America. they're staunch anti-communists, and the Republicans, at a time when the Democrats were going woke socialist, they didn't understand that those voters were leaving them. And then you got a lot of Mexican Americans who've been here for generations, and the newer ones, they've come here right. They went through the process, and it's a long,
Right.
lengthy process, but they did it right. So they were more concerned about fixing the broken immigration system because, you got crime gangs, drugs, you got people coming in, undercutting their businesses, et cetera. And so the biggest issue was inflation. And when you look at, for Hispanic voters, when you look at how Donald Trump appealed to them, getting the record 46% among the Hispanic voters, without a doubt, their top issue when we asked them is the economy 30. This is a post-election survey we did in November with Univision. 37% said economic policies, mainly inflation, and 14% said the border policies is the reason why they were voting for, Republicans. And if they voted for Harris, it was like abortion. The ones who voted for Harris, they were saying abortion, women's rights, 20%. And Trump, he did still get 38% Hispanic women and won a majority among Hispanic men, like 53%.
That's what I was going to ask. I read that he won Hispanic men by 12 points, and that the Harris campaign was actually targeting Hispanic men with abortion ads.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't logical. It almost seemed like they didn't know their audience. And I know that the African American male vote got so much play, with Obama saying, hey, bros, or whatever, that conversation that got picked up, and basically chastising Black men for not supporting Harris. But I didn't realize that Trump was carrying Hispanic men too, from what I've read, at least. And maybe you can shed some light on that, because that particular, at least that I read, didn't get as much of a spotlight as what was happening in the African American side of things with men. But I also think that was still a much smaller percentage of the vote on the African American side, but it seems to be substantial on the Hispanic male side.
Yeah, among African Americans, we got 21% among African American men nationally, which is a big, considering he got 12% overall in 2020. But considering we got 32% among all Hispanic voters in 2020, and then we go to 46 and we win a majority among Hispanic men, you had a similar kind of gender gap that the media was focused on with running against Harris this time, because she was a woman. It was obvious. And it was harder to get African-American women because she was an African-American woman. And however, the difference was the Democrats got blown away by the male voters, whether they were white, Hispanic, Asian, African-Americans. We got a record share of. The Democrats really lost the male vote in a bad way, particularly younger men. And I've seen data recently, where they're saying, still analyzing this past election, it was like 75% of young males, white males under 30, were voting for Trump, and it was because they're being blamed for all these problems they had nothing to do with. They're trying to get a job after college, or or serving in the military or whatever, and they're being blamed for this stuff. But the other part was that the really exciting part is the improvement among Hispanic voters for the Republicans, because, and it's something that they better not take for granted, because the polls that I'm seeing, the Hispanic voters are still up for grabs. And when I told Chris Lasavito, one of the campaign managers after the election, I said, we won we got a record share. We won among Hispanic men. We got 46% among all Hispanic voters, but we only rented that vote. We got it for the one election because Biden and Harris failed. And they failed on inflation, they failed on the border, they failed on crime.
Right.
But we've only rented it. We need to succeed. We need to make their lives better. We need to look at the next election and realize the Republicans, Trump won't be on the ballot. I mean, Trump will be the president, but he won't be on the ballot. And
Right.
in the Univision survey that we did, in the post-election survey, when we asked them, do you think the campaigns for president made enough of an effort to communicate to Hispanic voters in Spanish? Only 32% of the voters said yes. Hispanic voters. This is in the 7 battleground states. Only 32% said yes. So
Republicans didn't win because they had exceptional outreach and engagement with the Hispanic community. They won because Harris and Biden failed.
Well, it created an opportunity for Donald Trump. I don't understand.
Right. But I guess it created a comparison of how did I do this was the greatest strength for Trump was he had been president. So he was never saying, here's what I'm going to do when I'm president. Right. He could talk about real results when he was president, and they were good. I mean, they were fantastic economically. And Hispanics were some of the biggest recipients of his policies because they're so entrepreneurial. But when they talk about the engagement side of things, Hispanics could reminisce and think, I did great under Trump. My business did great. My salary was going up. My wages were rising. I could afford gas. I could afford to pay my rent. I could afford to buy groceries. But they knew they couldn't do it under Biden. But it doesn't mean that Republicans have figured out how to engage in a meaningful, consistent way with the Hispanic community. And I think that's the heart of what we want to get to with this panel, because as you said, we were very involved with our Hispanic Vote Coalition in key states, and we were engaging with Hispanic pastors and talking to them, and so that they were almost being trained how to talk to their congregation on issues that that Hispanics were facing, with inflation and things like that, things they cared about, faith, family, entrepreneurship, the economy, things like that.
Yeah, we
have to continue those conversations. Yes. You're right. I mean, that's the greatest point I've heard anybody talk about is we rented the Hispanic vote, and we have to figure out how to own it, because Republicans do align with the Hispanic community, or Hispanics align with the Republican community. So that's what's so important about this panel, and why I'm so glad you're going to be on it.
By the way, when you think about it, I mean, we asked in the post-election survey for Univision, we asked them about what they value, what they strongly value Hispanic voters. And in the 7 battleground states, 90% said family. They strongly value family. Well, think about what the Democrats were trying to feed the voters during the last 4 years. And we took a lot of flack or incredulity from the media, where they were saying, why are you running this ad about Harris wanting to pay for transgender operations for men in jail or whatever? And we had a video clip of her saying she supported that, et cetera. But
I saw it. It was a very impactful commercial.
Right. And there was certainly Spanish-speaking versions of that. And the Hispanic voters strongly value the family, 90% in the 7 battleground states. And here they are trying to undermine the gender. And, Spanish is a language where every word has a gender. It's either masculine or feminine. I mean, it's no neutral gender. And the whole culture is respects the 2 genders. And here they are, the Democrats are like, no, there's more than 2 genders. And the Spanish, they don't want their kids. They want their kids to go to school in the United States. And hey, this is why they want school choices. They want them to learn to read and write and do math as well as any student in school. And instead they're being given gender ideology. And here they are, totally committed to the family. By the way, second to the strongly value scale, small business entrepreneurship, 71%. That's strongly valued. They value small business. Think of all the Hispanic small businesses. You probably dealt with them in the battleground states. You dealt with them across America. You and Alfredo Ortiz, you worked with them. They want a chance to run their own business to succeed. And they also value the military, strongly value 68%, and they value the American dream 63%. That's strongly valued. That's not marginally valued. That's we passionately support the family, small business, military, and the American dream. So it was a perfect setup for Donald Trump to run a comparison campaign to Biden and Harris. and we could do it in Spanish as well as English. And the president, they understand who the president is, and he doesn't speak Spanish, but he loves people. He loved to interact with people. He loved all his trips to Arizona and Vegas, to Nevada, and to the other battleground states. He would go to Reading, Pennsylvania, because there's large groups of Hispanic voters. He went to Crotona Park in the Bronx. Have you ever been to Crotona Park in the Bronx? For those of us who are from there, yeah. But by the way, I have friends who were like, after the rally, they're like, yeah, but we don't go there at night. But that
was a fantastic rally,
yes.
and it did show how much people really do love him. But
he loves them back. He goes back. He loves to interact with people. Like, one of my biggest fears right now is in the White House. The White House is the biggest cocoon going, where you don't get to see and interact with normal people. And he's got to get out there, because he feeds off that energy. Like when he was doing the part about no tax on tips, people say, I'm getting calls from reporters. Well, did you poll this? How did it poll? And I'm saying, no, he didn't. We didn't poll it. We poll after the fact. He decided he wants to do this. So I'm sure. By the way, you'll love this. In December, when we polled the no tax on tips, people supported 71-21, 64% among Democrats supported. So it's like, he just has
the no tax on overtime,
right.
I mean, had to have pulled off the charts. I sat next to a woman on a plane just before the election, and she worked in TV production. So she was, their contract, they go where the work is and they get hired out for the particular project, but she gets paid overtime. And she said a lot of overtime. Yeah. And she said, I'm voting for him for that.
Yeah. And by the way, that was 66-25. They support that. And the one is no tax on Social Security, 82-11. And you realize the Democrats, when the Democrats voted on the budget framework that Mike Johnson put up, they've already voted on this. Every Democrat voted against those plans. The no tax on tips, the no tax on. They've already voted against no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security. They voted against the Republican House budget framework. But what's worse than that? We also know from polling that we did for another group, 49% of all voters are not aware that the Trump tax cuts lapsed this year. And
it's all we talk about.
And it's all you talk. And by the way, small business, from the polls that we do for you every other month, that small business owners are largely in favor of making the Trump tax cuts permanent. And we found out the same thing in our other polling, that they supported 64-21, make it permanent. But they have no clue that the largest tax increase in history is coming if it lapses. Now, in the 7 battleground states, whether you're Hispanic or whether you were African-American or Asian or whatever, you saw ads where we said she was going to raise your taxes, Harris was going to raise your taxes, and Trump would cut your taxes. The other 43 states didn't really see those ads. So they have no idea this massive tax increase is coming. And Hispanic voters hate taxes. So it's like they can't afford it. And they're working people. And just like they want the Trump tax cuts with no tax on tips, overtime, and so Social Security, and they wanted to help small businesses. And the impact on small businesses inside out, the capital gains and the other things that they're going to take away from small businesses. It's like right now, we really need to motivate people, let them know that if we don't get this passed early this year so that it goes into place, you'll have a tax increase. You'll have beyond a recession. Steve Forbes said we'll have a depression.
It's not just that. We can't wait till midnight, December 31st, to finally get everybody on board, which seems to be the dramatic nature of what happens in Congress with big bills, because small businesses, above everything else, good policy, bad policy, they need certainty. And so if they go all the way to December 31st and they still don't have certainty about their taxes, they're going to plan accordingly.
Yes.
And if they don't have certainty about having those taxes, they're going to do what? If they believe their taxes are going to go up, they're going to operate that way. They're going to cut back. They're going to look at their labor costs. They're going to look at their inventory costs. They're going to look at everything and how they prepare for the potential of the tax increase. And it'll be great if they pass it at the 11th hour, but the plan will already be in place.
Right.
And many people can't change that plan on a dime. And that's what people on the Hill just don't understand about this, zigzagging back and forth, tax increase, tax cut, it has to be consistent. And we should be looking at the tax code much more often than every 30 years to make it better, more efficient, and simpler. I mean, it should be much simpler. And that's what the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act did. And, it's just so distressing, but I digress. Tax Cuts and Jobs Act are what I dream about.
This is a very important. It's not a digression. This is the fundamental. When you have in your polls, you see in the small business owners, they tell you that they won't hire people. They'll stop their expansion plans. Right. That's over half of the small businesses in America right now tell us that in your polls that they're not going to hire. They're going to stop hiring. They could lay off people, or they're going to.
But what you're reading what you're reading to our audience right now, if they don't have certainty, that's the plan they're going to go with.
Yeah.
Because that's the worst case scenario. Yeah. So the longer this drags out, and that's why we urge the Senate Republicans to vote for the one big beautiful bill. Right. I love saying it. Instead of trying to break it into two bills, this is an easy win to put on the board. This is such an easy win.
No, it's an important win, because if we don't pass the tax cuts, make them permanent to stop this tax increase, the Democrats will be revived. We'll lose in the midterms. We'll lose the House. We'll lose the Senate. And Senator Thune, I used to poll for him when he was running for Congress, and I did the independent expenditure against Tom Daschle. So I know he's going to try to do everything he can as majority leader to get this passed, but we've never passed two reconciliations. Larry Kudlow tells me, my expert friend, he tells me that never passed two reconciliations before. And we know that there was, and in 2017, when President Trump was trying to pass his first tax cut, these tax cuts that need to be made permanent, it was in the fall, and I said to him, "Why'd you do healthcare first?" He said, "Well, Leader McConnell and Speaker Ryan told me I had to do it so I'd have the savings." I said, "Only in Washington is our money their savings. Like, basically, a tax cut is savings." And I said, "You should have passed the tax cut first." The tax cut passed by December, but it didn't go into effect until after the midterm elections, and we lost the House and we lost the Senate.
Right.
And that got President Trump impeached. So we cannot lose control of the House or the Senate. I mean, we have to.
I totally agree. I totally agree. But getting back to that all important Hispanic vote and the panel that you're going to sit on at our Freedom Fighters Summit and Gala, May 1st and 2nd in Savannah, Georgia. We've talked about how Trump increased his percentage of the Hispanic vote. It was in part because of the outreach of his campaign through directly to the Hispanic community in Spanish-speaking ads. But we also talked about the failure of the Biden-Harris policies. And 32% of Hispanics, only 32% felt like there was enough outreach.
Right.
So the failure of the policies helped. So what do you think, like, what's your thought on how Republicans do better? How do they increase the engagement? How do they grow the Hispanic vote? Because this is going to be the key topic that you all are talking about on this panel, May 1st and 2nd in Savannah.
Well, the key thing is that they elected us because of our stance on inflation and on economic growth. They want economic growth. So it goes back to our previous conversation. More so than probably any other segment of voters, they want the economic growth. So President Trump, President Trump, besides the fact that we have to communicate with them in Spanish and we have to reach out, et cetera, and they're more likely to vote for, a candidate and for the president because they did and they do to reach out. But you need the substance. I mean, it's critical that you have the substance that you have. We're in charge now. We have the White House, we have the House, we have the Senate. We have to, what we were just talking about doing is we have to grow the economy. At the same time, hold down inflation, which there's some signs that inflation is receding. The price of gas at the pumps, if the price goes down, that's a success for President Trump, and it appears to be that it's going down a little bit. The idea of stopping any tax increase and actually lowering taxes for people that work. I mean, if there's no tax on tips, if there's no tax on overtime, if there's no tax on Social Security income, people will go back to work, even if they're retired. They'll work more. If you work more, you have a growing economy. That really helps small businesses if you have more people in the labor market that are available so that they could work at your business. And growing small businesses is absolutely critical. So the best prescription for winning a midterm election or to keeping the Hispanic vote is to succeed. Keep the promises that you said you would. So that's the best.
And that's what President Trump said his revenge would be, right? Succeeding,
yes.
Success.
Yes, his retribution. That was the word. They were saying he's looking for retribution, and he said during the primaries, he said, my retribution will be my success. And so if you get low inflation, a growing economy, you get stopping endless wars, you secure the border, you send violent, illegal criminals back to the countries whence they came, that's your success.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, John, I cannot wait for this event. Again, it is May 1st and 2nd in Savannah, Georgia. It's the Job Creators Network Second Freedom Fighters Summit and Gala. We will have fantastic speakers there, as well as panelists like John McLaughlin talking about the Hispanic vote, talking about the economy, regulations, taxes, even the dangers of the deficit. Kellyanne Conway will be there. Hugh Hewitt, Governor Kemp from Virginia, Governor Youngkin from Virginia, Governor Kemp from Georgia will be there to welcome everybody at our first night welcome dinner. And we're even going to have fun too. It's not just going to be about very heavy topics, which are super important, but we're going to have fun. We're going to have yacht rock, which is one of the most popular cover bands in the country. If you've ever heard the yacht rock genre, it is fantastic music. We're also going to have Rob Schneider, the comedian and actor. Fantastic. Can't wait to see him. And of course, Lee Greenwood, the country superstar singer who has toured with President Trump now, will be coming to sing his famous song as well. So if you're interested in registering for the summit, you can go to jcn2025summit.com and register for the event. We'd love to see you. Please come out. And John, thank you so much for taking the time to join us on Main Street Matters and talk about the Hispanic vote. Thank you all for taking the time to tune in. Main Street Matters is distributed by Salem Podcast Network. New episodes debut every Wednesday and Friday. You can subscribe to the show at salempodcastnetwork.com, and we will be back soon with a new episode.